The notification blinked on my phone screen, a ghost from a past I had buried under years of concrete and steel. It was a name I hadn't allowed myself to even think in years. Chloe. Chloe has sent you a friend request. My thumb hovered over the screen, steady and calm. There was no spike in my heart rate, no rush of anger or sadness. There was nothing. It was the 5th account she had made this month. With a simple, practiced motion, I pressed confirm on the block prompt. She vanished. Just as my mother, father, and brother had vanished from my digital life last week when I did the same to them. They were all out there, somewhere in the dark, pressing their faces against the glass of a life they could see but never, ever touch. She probably thought it was a mistake, an accidental rejection. She couldn't comprehend a world where I would willingly refuse her. In her mind, I was still the broken boy she had left crying in a half-empty apartment, the one whose dreams had crumbled into dust at his feet. She thought she was leaving a pathetic loser, a failure who would never amount to anything. But she didn't leave a loser. She left the man who would go on to build an empire from the rubble she'd left behind, the man who now owned the very company her golden boy brother was desperately begging for an entry-level job at. The irony was so thick I could taste it. She had thrown me away like trash, and now she was digging through the dumpster, hoping to find a treasure she hadn't realized she'd discarded. My revenge was never about destroying her. It was simply about building a world she wasn't allowed to be a part of. You're probably wondering why she's so desperate to get back into a life she so carelessly threw away, and why my own family is right there beside her, begging for scraps from my table. How does a man go from being the family scapegoat to the one holding all the power? It all started with a single promise I made to myself on the worst day of my life. The day she looked at me with cold pity in her eyes and walked out the door forever. That day, the sky was a bruised, weeping gray, the rain outside matching the hollow storm inside my chest. I was sitting on the floor of my tiny apartment because I'd already sold the couch. All around me were cardboard boxes filled with the sad remnants of my failed tech startup, branded mugs, unsold inventory, and a stack of business cards with my name on them, under the title, Founder and CEO. It felt like a joke. Just 3 days earlier, my server had crashed, my last bit of funding had evaporated, and my dream had flatlined. I had called Chloe, my girlfriend of 5 years, hoping for a shoulder to cry on. Instead, she showed up with my parents and my brother, Leo. I should have known then. It wasn't a rescue mission. It was an intervention. Chloe stood in the doorway, her arms crossed. She looked perfect, as always, not a single hair out of place. Her eyes scanned the pathetic scene, me, the boxes, the cheap rented space, and her expression hardened. "I can't do this anymore, Mark," she said, her voice devoid of the warmth I once cherished. "I've waited for you to get it together, to be a man. But this is rock bottom. I can't tie my future to a sinking ship." My mother, standing right behind her, nodded slowly, a look of profound disappointment on her face. Not disappointment in Chloe for her cruelty, but in me, for my failure. Leo, my brother, just leaned against the doorframe, a smug little smile playing on his lips. He was working a cushy, do-nothing marketing job our father had gotten for him, and in their eyes, he was the model of success. I looked at my father, pleading with my eyes for him to say something, to defend me. He just sighed, a heavy, tired sound. "Listen to her, son," he said, his voice gravelly. "Maybe she's right. I told you this tech fantasy was a waste of time. You never had the head for business, not like your brother." He gestured towards Leo, who puffed his chest out slightly. The words struck me harder than any physical blow. It wasn't just Chloe leaving me. It was my entire family, my whole world, unanimously voting me off the island. They stood there, a united front of judgment, as Chloe slid the promise ring I'd given her off her finger and placed it on top of a box. "I deserve better," she said. And then they all turned and walked out, leaving me alone in the suffocating silence of my failure. For a week, I barely moved. I existed in that apartment like a ghost, surrounded by the ghosts of my ambitions. The silence they left behind was louder than any argument. Their words echoed in the emptiness. Sinking ship, waste of time, not like your brother. I deserve better. Each phrase was a chisel, chipping away at what little was left of my self-worth. I was exactly what they said I was, a failure. The shame was a physical weight, pressing down on my chest, making it hard to breathe. Eventually, the landlord's eviction notice was the only thing that forced me back into the world of the living. I sold the last of my startup's equipment for pennies on the dollar and moved into a single room in a rundown boarding house on the industrial side of town. My new life was a bleak landscape of survival. My world shrank to the size of that 10 by 10 room with its stained mattress, single hot plate, and a window that looked out onto a brick wall. I got a job washing dishes in a greasy diner, the steam and the smell of old frying oil clinging to me long after my shifts ended. I worked another job stocking shelves overnight at a grocery store. Sleep became a luxury I couldn't afford. Every dollar I earned went to rent and instant noodles. I was invisible, a nameless face in the city's underbelly. And the hunger in my stomach was constant. My family would call, maybe once every few weeks. My mother's voice would be sickeningly cheerful. "Oh, Mark, you'll never guess. Leo just got a promotion. His boss says he has a real gift for managing people. We're all so proud." She'd go on and on about his new company car or the expensive dinner they'd all had to celebrate. Never once did she ask, "How are you?" Not really. The one time I hinted that things were tough, her tone immediately frosted over. "Well, we hope you're not expecting a handout," she'd said coolly. "All our savings are tied up helping your brother with his new condo. He's making smart investments." That was the moment the sadness finally curdled into something else. It became cold, hard, and sharp. That night, after a 16-hour double shift, I looked at my gaunt face in the reflection of my dark phone screen. I saw the scapegoat they'd created. And I made a promise to that broken man in the reflection. I wasn't going to do this for Chloe or for their approval. I was going to do it for me. I would rebuild my life, not just brick by brick, but skyscraper by skyscraper, until my success was a fortress they could never breach, and my happiness was a language they would never understand. That promise became my religion. The first thing I did was change my phone number. I wrote the new one on a slip of paper and put it in a drawer. I didn't give it to anyone. The toxic drip of my family's fake concern and thinly veiled scorn was severed. The silence was no longer about loneliness. It was about focus. It was the sound of construction. My life became a rigid, punishing routine. I'd wake at 4 a.m. for my dishwashing shift, work until noon, then race across town to the grocery store to stock shelves from 1 p.m. to 9 p.m. My body ached constantly, my hands were raw, and I was perpetually exhausted. But the moment I got back to my tiny room, the real work began. I had one asset left from my old life: my brain. I had failed at running a business, but I still knew how to build things with code. I bought a cheap, used laptop with the first $100 I managed to save. From 10 p.m. until I collapsed from exhaustion around 2 a.m., I coded. The world outside my window ceased to exist. There were no friends, no parties, no television. There was only the screen's glow on my face, the click of the keys, and the endless lines of logic. I devoured free online courses, learned new programming languages, and took on tiny, soul-crushing freelance gigs from overseas clients for $20 or $30 a pop. It wasn't about the money. It was about sharpening the sword. While my brother was likely outspending our parents' money on overpriced drinks to impress people, I was fueled by cheap black coffee and a burning, cold rage. The memory of their faces, Chloe's pity, my mother's disappointment, my father's dismissal, my brother's smirk, was the fuel for my engine. Every line of code I wrote was a brick in the wall of my new life. Every completed project, no matter how small, was a tiny testament to my own worth, something they couldn't touch or belittle. For 2 solid years, that was my existence, a grueling cycle of manual labor and intense mental exertion. I was a machine building itself. I was no longer the family scapegoat or the failed entrepreneur. I was becoming an architect of my own vindication, and I was just starting to draw up the blueprints for my masterpiece. The masterpiece I'd envisioned wasn't flashy. It was born from the drudgery of my own life. Working at the grocery store and the diner, I saw firsthand how small businesses struggled with inefficiency. Their scheduling systems were a mess of paper and spreadsheets. Their inventory management was chaotic, and they wasted countless hours on tasks that could be automated. The idea sparked in my mind like a flint striking steel. I would build a simple, elegant software solution to streamline those exact problems. I called it Nexus. For a year, every spare moment, every ounce of my energy was poured into building it. It became my obsession. When Nexus was finally ready, a lean, functional prototype, I used my last $200 of savings to host it on a server. With a trembling hand, I posted about it on a few online forums for small business owners. Then I waited. For a week, nothing happened. The old, familiar dread began to creep back in, whispering that this was just another failure. I almost gave up. But then, on a Tuesday morning, an email notification popped up on my phone. You have a new subscriber to Nexus, basic plan, $29.99 month. I stared at it for a full 5 minutes. It was a bakery owner from Ohio, a complete stranger. Someone saw what I had built and decided it was worth their hard-earned money. That $29 felt more valuable than all the venture capital I had lost in my previous life. It was real. It was mine. That first subscriber became 2, then 10, then 50. Word of mouth was my only marketing. People loved it. It was cheap. It was simple, and it worked. Soon I was making enough to quit the dishwashing job. The feeling of walking out of that steamy, greasy kitchen for the last time was intoxicating. I had more time to code, to improve Nexus, to answer customer support emails. 3 months later, the monthly recurring revenue from my software surpassed my salary from the grocery store. I walked in, handed my manager my name tag, and thanked him for the opportunity. As I stepped out into the sunlight, a free man for the first time in years, I wasn't just unemployed. I was the full-time CEO of my own profitable growing company. The foundation was laid. Now it was time to build the skyscraper. With my undivided attention, Nexus didn't just grow, it exploded. I was obsessed with my customers. I listened to their feedback, worked tirelessly to implement new features, and answered every support ticket myself with a level of care they'd never experienced from a software company. My subscriber base doubled, then doubled again. Soon, I was drowning in work. The day I realized I couldn't do it all myself was terrifying and exhilarating. I posted a job opening for a junior developer and hired a sharp, hungry kid named David, who was even more passionate about the product than I was. The first time I signed his paycheck, my hand shook. I was responsible for someone else's livelihood. The company was no longer just me. It was us. Within 6 months, we had a team of 5 and moved out of my apartment and into our first real office. It was a small, open-plan space above a coffee shop, but to us, it was the Google campus. We painted the walls, assembled the desks ourselves, and put up a big monitor that displayed our key metrics in real time. Watching the user count climb every single day became our collective addiction. I moved out of the boarding house and into a clean, minimalist apartment downtown, the kind with large windows and a view of the city lights. I bought a car that started every time I turned the key. These weren't acts of flashy revenge. They were affirmations of my new reality. I was building a life of stability and peace, the very things my family and Chloe had implicitly denied me. My new family became my team. We worked hard and celebrated our wins. My circle of friends was now composed of other founders, programmers, And designers. People who respected my journey and valued my mind, not my connections or my parents' approval. I was healing. I was learning that my worth wasn't something to be granted by others. It was something I had forged myself in the fires of my darkest years. After 3 years of relentless focus, Nexus was a multi-million-dollar company with over 50 employees. We were becoming a known name in the industry. And it was then, when we were featured on the cover of a major tech magazine as a bootstrapped success story, that the ghosts of my past finally found my new address. The magazine lay on my desk, my own face staring back at me from the cover under the headline, "The Bootstrapper's Blueprint: How Mark Tran Turned Rock Bottom into a $50 million Tech Powerhouse." My team had framed it, and they were all buzzing with excitement. For me, seeing it in print felt less like a celebration and more like the lighting of a beacon, one that would inevitably summon ships from a world I'd long since left behind. I knew they would see it. It was only a matter of time. The call came 2 days later. It was an unknown number, but I had a pretty good idea who it was. I let it ring 4 times before answering, my voice calm and professional. "This is Mark." There was a half-second of silence, then a burst of overly enthusiastic noise. "Mark, honey, it's me, it's your mother." Her voice was shrill with a forced cheerfulness that made my skin crawl. "Oh, we are just so proud of you. Your father and I saw you in that magazine on the cover. I bought 10 copies. We just knew you had it in you all along. We always said you were the determined one." The lie was so audacious, so completely disconnected from reality, that I almost laughed. We always knew. The words hung in the air between us, a monument to their delusion. "Thank you, Mother," I said, my voice flat, betraying no emotion. "That's kind of you to say." "Kind? It's the truth," she chirped. "Listen, we have to celebrate, the whole family. We'll have a big dinner. You can tell us all about your fancy company. Leo will be so thrilled to see you. He's been having a bit of a tough time lately, and seeing his successful brother would be such a boost for him." There it was, the first angle. The first attempt to leverage my success to solve their problems. It wasn't about celebrating me. It was about using me. "I'm very busy with the company right now," I replied, my tone leaving no room for negotiation. "Perhaps some other time." I could feel her deflation through the phone. After a moment of awkward silence, I added, "I have to get back to work. Goodbye." I ended the call before she could protest. I looked out my office window at the sprawling city below. The first wave had been repelled. I knew it was just the beginning. My mother's failed attempt was just the opening salvo. A few weeks later, the true nature of their desperation began to surface. I learned through the grapevine, old family acquaintances who were suddenly eager to talk to me, what was really happening. Leo's cushy marketing job had vanished in a round of corporate downsizing. He had been coasting on charm and nepotism for years, never bothering to cultivate any real skills. Faced with a competitive job market, he was utterly lost. The fancy condo my parents had sunk their savings into was now a financial anchor dragging him and them to the bottom. The golden child's shine had worn off, revealing nothing but cheap metal underneath. Their entire life strategy, which was to pour all their hopes and resources into their favored son, had spectacularly backfired. That's when my father called. His tone was a world away from the man who had dismissed my dreams years ago. The gruff certainty was gone, replaced by a strained, humiliating attempt at friendliness. He stumbled through awkward small talk before finally getting to the point. "So, Mark," he began, clearing his throat, "your mother tells me your company's doing very well. That's great, really great. Listen, the thing is, your brother, Leo, he's got this fantastic business idea, a real winner. He just needs a little capital to get it off the ground, you know? We were thinking, since you're in that world now, maybe you could help him out. As an investment, say $50,000, it would mean the world to him, to us." I listened to the whole pathetic pitch without interrupting. The man who told me I didn't have a head for business was now asking me to fund his failed son's imaginary company. "Father," I said, my voice as level as a frozen lake. Nexus was built on a detailed business plan, market research, and a viable product. Has Leo provided you with any of those things? There was a sputtering silence on the other end. Well, no, it's still in the idea phase, but then the answer is no, I cut him off. I don't make investments based on ideas, and more importantly, I have a strict policy not to mix my business finances with family matters. A flash of his old anger returned. "After everything we've done for you?" he blurted out. I said nothing. The emptiness of his threat was pathetic. I simply said, "I have to go," and hung up the phone. Their lifeboat wasn't coming. It was around this time, when their desperation was reaching a fever pitch, that another ghost decided to reappear. Just as I had predicted, the family's failure to breach my walls signaled a change in tactics. They sent in their other agent, the one who had started the demolition of my old life. Chloe. Her reappearance wasn't a surprise. It was an inevitability. I imagine her life hadn't become the grand success story she'd envisioned. She had traded my supposed failure for a string of men who probably had the surface-level shine she desired. The nice car, the expensive watch, but lacked any real foundation. Now, years later, with her own youth fading, she saw my face on a magazine cover, a certified success, and realized she'd traded a diamond in the rough for a handful of glittering pebbles. Her campaign began subtly. A coward's approach. First, a single like on a LinkedIn post about Nexus reaching a new market. It was from an account with a different last name, but the profile picture was unmistakably her. A week later, a follow request on my professional Instagram, the one I kept for public-facing company news. I ignored it. Then came the direct message, the one she must have spent hours crafting to strike the perfect balance of remorse and self-interest. "Hey Mark," it began, "it's Chloe. I know this is totally out of the blue and it's been forever. I saw the article about you and Nexus, wow. I can't say I'm surprised. A part of me always knew you had that brilliance in you. I was so young and stupid back then, and I've regretted how things ended ever since. I was going through a lot. Anyway, I just wanted to say congratulations. I really hope you're happy." I read the words on my phone, sitting in the quiet of my office late one night. I felt no anger, no pain, no nostalgia. I felt nothing at all. It was like reading a poorly written advertisement. Every line was a calculation. The flattery, the downplaying of her cruelty, the pathetic excuse of being young and stupid. She wasn't apologizing for leaving me. She was auditioning for a role in my new life. I didn't reply. I didn't block her. I simply archived the conversation and went back to reviewing our quarterly growth projections. Her words were meaningless. But I knew the silence that followed wouldn't last. Desperation is never patient. My indifference was a match to her fuse. A week after her ignored message, another one came. "Hey, just wanted to make sure you got my last message? Would love to hear how you are." I deleted it without reading past the first sentence. Then came another. "Mark, I know you're busy, but I'm going through some things and I could really use a friend." I blocked the account. 2 days later, a new friend request appeared. The name was different, but the profile picture was the same. I blocked it again. This became a recurring, pathetic ritual. She was a digital ghost, rattling chains on the periphery of my life, unable to comprehend that the house she was haunting was no longer mine. Her desperation spilled into the public sphere. She started leaving comments on Nexus's official Facebook page. "Such an amazing company. The CEO must be a genius." It was transparent and mortifying. At the same time, my family escalated their tactics. The final humiliation came from my brother himself. Leo called me, his voice stripped of all its former arrogance, now thin and reedy with desperation. "Mark, bro, I need a job, he said, dispensing with any pretense. Things are bad. I was thinking, you must need a director of marketing, right? I could do that. I have experience. I almost pitied him. Almost. Leo, I said calmly, our director-level positions require a minimum of 10 years of proven results in the tech sector. Your resume doesn't meet the qualifications. I could hear his sharp intake of breath. But I'm your brother, he stammered. You owe me. I let the silence sit for a moment before delivering the final blow. We have several entry-level customer support positions open. You are welcome to submit an application through the HR portal on our website like any other candidate. I can't make any promises. The click as he hung up was deeply satisfying. They were failing on all fronts. Their individual attacks were being deflected by a wall of calm indifference. So they decided to join forces. The final proof came in a message from another one of Chloe's burner accounts. Your mother and I are really worried about you, Mark. You've changed. This success has made you cold. We just want the old you back. We. That single word told me everything I needed to know. They were a committee now, a committee of ghosts, plotting in the ruins of a past I had escaped. I knew what was coming next. When digital and phone appeals fail, the desperate always resort to one last ugly tactic, a public spectacle. The ambush came, as expected, at the worst possible moment for them and the best possible moment for me. Nexus had just won the Innovator of the Year award at a large industry gala. I was standing on a crowded terrace, laughing with my lead engineer and a major investor, the heavy glass award still cool in my hand. Then I saw them. The four of them, my mother, my father, Leo, and Chloe, approaching like a storm front. They weren't on the guest list, which meant they had either lied or snuck their way in. A hush fell over our little group as they came to a stop before me. My mother, a master of amateur dramatics, started first, her eyes welling up with fake tears. Mark, honey, we had to come. How could you shut us out like this? We're your family. We love you. Chloe stepped forward, placing a hand on my mother's arm in a show of solidarity. Mark, the man I fell in love with would never be this cold, she whispered, loud enough for everyone to hear. Don't let this success change you. Then came my father, his face red with a mixture of rage and humiliation. This is what you do? You stand here with these strangers and turn your back on your own blood? After everything we did for you? Finally, Leo, the broken golden child. I'm your brother, he choked out. You're supposed to help me, not throw me away like trash. They stood there, a pathetic tableau of manufactured grievance, waiting for me to crack, to yell, to make a scene. I did none of those things. I took a calm sip of my water, set the glass down, and looked at each of them in turn, my voice low and steady, but carrying in the sudden silence. You want to talk about family? I began, my eyes locking with my mother's. A family doesn't stand there and nod in agreement when their son is being called a failure. A family doesn't call him a sinking ship before walking out. I turned to Chloe. The man you loved was the one you abandoned the second his dream hit a rough patch. My gaze shifted to my father. And everything you did for me apparently included telling me I had no talent for business, right before you called to ask for a $50,000 handout for the son you actually bet on. Finally, I looked at my brother. You are my blood, Leo, but you are not my brother. My brothers and sisters are the people here with me tonight, the team that worked through the night with me when all I had was an idea. You are all strangers to me. You are ghosts from a life that is no longer mine. I then caught the eye of the event's security chief. These four are not on the list. Please show them out. As they were escorted away, sputtering in disbelief, I turned back to my investor. Now, you were telling me about the Series B funding? After they were gone, a strange thing happened. The shocked silence on the terrace broke, not with awkward whispers, but with a wave of quiet support. The investor I'd been speaking with clapped a firm hand on my shoulder. "Well," he said with a wry smile, "every successful company has a messy origin story. Don't let it bother you." My team gathered around me, their faces filled with fierce loyalty. In that moment, I knew I had made the right choice. My public declaration wasn't an act of cruelty. It was an act of truth. I hadn't destroyed my old family. I had simply protected my new one. That night, I didn't lose a family. I confirmed one. In the weeks that followed, the silence from their side was absolute. The blocked numbers stayed blocked, the desperate emails stopped, and Chloe's phantom social media profiles vanished for good. I didn't need to know the details of their fate. I knew they were living in the world they had built for themselves, one propped up by entitlement and defined by the failure of their golden child, with no scapegoat left to bail them out or blame. Their punishment wasn't anything I inflicted upon them. It was simply the natural consequence of their own choices. A debt that had finally come due. My revenge was complete, not because I had hurt them, but because their existence no longer had the power to hurt me. They had become irrelevant. My life now is full. It's filled with challenging work, the camaraderie of a brilliant team, and the quiet satisfaction of building something meaningful. Sometimes, late at night, I'll look out at the city lights from my apartment window, the same lights that once seemed so distant and mocking. I don't think about the past much anymore. It feels like a story about someone else, a character I played in a different life. I didn't just rebuild my life from nothing. I built a new one, on a new foundation of self-respect, with walls too high for ghosts to climb. And I am finally, truly, at peace.